Fasten your seatbelts. I'd like to take you on a flight, actually share with you the flight that changed my career. My name's Sammy Wills. I am an aircrew paramedic with Yorkshire Air Ambulance, as you can see. There you go, my name's Sammy. I've travelled a long way since the year 2002 when I became a baby paramedic, a little aircrew member on a 2-year secondment. 13 years later, I'm still here, and we now have 2 state-of-the-art air ambulances based in Yorkshire. We fly out of NOSTELL-Nr Wakefield and also Thirsk, to RAF Topcliffe. The reason I share these photos is because it's the closest I get to flying it. She actually only flies about 6 inches off the ground when I'm moving her around. I'd like to share with you how my fellowship has flown forward. We fly with one pilot and 2 happy paramedics. And I'd like to share with you that when we fly around the whole of Yorkshire, how did I manage to actually get to fly around the world? And that is why I am grateful to have become a fellow. I had the opportunity to follow in my father's footsteps. He had encouraged me to become a fellow for many years, and he, back in 1990, did. Now, he has only just managed to meet with the Queen on this special 50th anniversary. I keep saying they sent the wrong Wills, but never mind. Dad, I followed in your footsteps because the challenge was, one of the topics was disasters and emergencies. Working for the ambulance service, it made sense that I apply. And I looked at managing mass medical emergency evacuations by air ambulance. We called it the NR project. I literally went round the world. I feel a bit greedy actually, because I've spoke to quite a few fellows, and then when they ask me where did I go, I'm like, oops. Now, I've been blessed that all the lessons that I've learnt, we haven't had a major disaster. But what I would like to share with you is some of the lessons that I learnt as I toured. Now, I'll start in Germany, because that's where I started. And I learnt there about the air desk. Now, the blue slides I've left in case they put these online and you can learn more about the project that I did. But the air desk we adopted in Yorkshire. And it meant that we were able to task ourselves to jobs. Our stand down rate when we were flying was between 30 and 40%. It's now actually only 14%. That means we're going to appropriate jobs, first time, right time. Obviously saving money, but also giving us the opportunity to be available for more important jobs. Then I moved on to New Orleans, where the Hurricane Katrina back in 2005 had hit. The picture that you can see there is Tulane's hospital, and it was completely flooded. But like any other hospital, had intensive care beds and patients that needed the evacuating. I spoke with the paramedics there that converted the rooftop car park into a helipad. You can see that on the left, and they literally commandeered as many helicopters and flew patients out. It was the only way in and out of that hospital. I then moved on to Washington, DC, where you may recall on 9/11 there too was a major disaster. And I worked out of the hospital there. Now, the picture that I'm showing is the lesson that I learnt from the use of lots of air ambulances at the same time. This was an incident, it made national news, of a minibus that crashed. There were 21 women that were injured, of which 12 were serious. In Yorkshire, we were enabled to use 6 air ambulances. It became a bit like a parking queue on the M62, but we were able to provide the best care possible for those patients that required it. Multiple helicopters using the purpose of mutual aid, from what I'd learnt in Washington, means that we can have 6 air ambulances within the Yorkshire borders within 30 minutes. We can actually have 9 if we include the police. When I was in Washington, I also noted that there are helipads. Here in the UK, we don't actually have legislation that each major trauma hospital has to have a helipad. We actually use a bit of car park or the nearest local park. And here in Washington, not only did they have a dedicated helipad outside the doors, they had a second one where what happened is the patient is dropped off at the mini pad, the rotor blades carry on, and they just hover taxi to the second site, meaning the next air ambulance can come in as quick. They actually can fit 4 aircraft on that bottom pad and refuel. Why was this important? Well, this became important because in Yorkshire, you may recall last year we had the Tour de France, actually the Grand Depart. It increased the population by an additional 3 million. We had 8 million people. And it actually became the busiest weekend in history for us in Yorkshire. We attended 29 incidents. And I can tell you, I was on the air desk, remember the lesson I learnt in Germany? And I coordinated those helicopters. Now the guys walking in there are like, Sammy, I never want to see you on that desk again, because the picture there is breakfast, lunch and dinner still on the table. They didn't get a chance to eat it. When I went to Australia, I was in awe of the level of paramedic, the skills that they have. They are a bit like being mountain rescue, cave rescue, security. They were very, very impressive, critical care paramedics. But the cage that you can see there intrigued me. It's supposed to simulate the cockpit of a helicopter that they dunk in a swimming pool. They actually learn helicopter underwater escape. Now, the biggest piece of water that I actually have to fly over is the Humber estuary. But we too now as paramedics have to be able to escape out of a helicopter. Mum, Dad, you'll be pleased to know that actually I stand a survival chance 80% increase because I've done the course. May I never land in the Humber estuary. We also have done swiftwater rescue and we are critical care paramedics. So we are improving. And we had the opportunity to learn about operating on winches. We don't have winches, but we do work in close cooperation with the Coast Guard. We've just had the search and rescue being retired, those big yellow coaches in the sky. They call our helicopter the Kinder Egg. You know the little yellow bit? But anyway, so yes, we get to fly. In New Zealand, I learnt about the community. Because the population isn't as dense and very sparse, they use community first aiders, community paramedics, community firefighters. These are just people that pop on jumpsuits and go to work. Now, the reason I mention this is because we were actually involved with the Yorkshire Air Ambulance. You may recall the Cumbria shootings about 5 years ago now. There was 11 seriously injured, but at the time we didn't know who was injured and who was dead. And the helicopter literally went and flew from scene to scene to scene. Quite harrowing, but there were 30 different locations, and the air ambulance came into its own, as did those community first responders. And on the back of that now, you may not be aware, but there are designated pods of equipment where people can help themselves, places like railway stations, big shopping centres. I then had the opportunity to actually go and visit Thailand. You remember the tsunami in 2004? And to look at how they actually were able to tolerate and put together the resources, being a very different country compared to ours. And what I learnt was that communication is the key. Unfortunately, it was also the King's celebratory birthday, and I missed out on actually working alongside. They were all too busy having a 3-day holiday. But like I mentioned, communication was the key, and we took from that when we're on the ground, we can't naturally talk to the other helicopters. So we now have a ground-to-air radio that plugs into your helmet, so you've still got ear protection, but you can communicate to all the other air ambulances that you may want to come to scene. Now that was my whistle-stop tour of going around the world. So you can undo your seatbelts, we're preparing to land, but what I would like to share with you is, Another quote from Sir Winston. We are still masters of our fate. We are still captains of our soul. But what I would like to add to that is, if we are prepared, ye shall not fear. Going on the tour, learning from fellow paramedics who are the same the world over, I was able to bring back some lessons and share them, and truly believe that by being prepared, we need not fear. I'd like to thank you very much for being able to share what I got up to. It is a privilege and an honour, and this is my small way of paying it back. Thank you very much.